Check.
Hey guys, we're gonna get started in about 2 minutes, so get your last piece of pizza or water or anything like that. All right, guys, welcome to the August community meeting for Ohio City Incorporated, or the Ohio City community. We are very happy to have you here. There's plenty of pizza and veggies and water in the back if you didn't get a chance to get it. And housekeeping, there's bathrooms around the behind where you registered if you need them. So tonight's agenda, we have a very busy one, and we're going to scoot the interim executive director just slightly, but we will definitely get to that. We just had a little bit of some scheduling stuff conflicts, so we will get back to that as soon as she gets here. But we did want to kind of fill everyone in on some upcoming events we have coming. So we have the Ohio City Street Festival, which we're super happy to say is returning after a 5-year hiatus on Sunday, September 15th. We have our next, the annual meeting. We are not having its regularly scheduled community meeting next month. It'll be Tuesday, September 24th, which is the 4th Tuesday of the month. And that will be at Bop Stop. So we'll have some more information coming out about that here really soon. And then we'll have Meet the Candidates Night on October 15th, which would be our regularly scheduled community meeting. And then our board elections would be on the 22nd. You need to have, if you would like to be on the Ohio City board, or if you would like to vote in the board, you do need to be a member. And here's the schedule laid out a little differently for that. But you do need to be a member by the 22nd of September. You can either sign up online, or we have forms at the table where you registered as well. So we really encourage you to join and be able to vote on our board of directors if you would like to see, if you would like to have an impact on how our organization works. Ohio City Street Festival, like I mentioned, the theme is homecoming as we return after a 5-year hiatus. So we have a lot of food, music, beer garden, kids zone, local makers, and community activities going on. So we hope to see you there. We'll have additional information coming out about that in the very near future. Just a reminder on rules of engagement when we get to questions, please raise your hand and we will have a team member come to you. Try to keep all questions and comments concise and appropriate. We ask that you only ask one question at a time, so please let others have a chance just to make sure that we are able to get to everyone, and respect the values and beliefs in others, and to listen with an open mind. So we're going to scoop past that, and we're going to pass this over to Brandon Collier.
Good evening, everyone. So currently, we're pursuing the Cuyahoga County Supplemental Development Grant. It is $50,000 to help an initiative in the community, in the region. So the big use we're going to use it on is Fairview Gardens. So we operate a 40-unit affordable senior building in the neighborhood. It could use some love, so we are trying to get some feedback from the greater community about any programming that people have seen that works in senior buildings, any kind of amenities people would like to see, and just how to make it a more welcoming community space. So I have a tripod back there with suggestions. I'll also be bouncing around, so feel free to grab me. We can talk about it in depth a little bit more, but this is all very high level right now while we're trying to figure out a plan and see exactly what we want to do with the building and help the residents. Okay? And then next Tuesday, if anybody wants to pop in, we'll be hosting a resident-led engagement in the actual building. So if anybody's curious about seeing the building, what it is, feel free to come by. We're going to be starting at 6 p.m., probably going until 7:30. All right, and then if anybody has any questions for me on that, otherwise I will talk to people as we make it around, and I'll be hanging around after the meeting to talk about it. Okay. And with that, we jump right into the results of the West 29th Street engagement session.
Thank you, Brandon. Hi, everybody. My name is Joyce Wong. I'm the director of the City Planning Commission at the City of Cleveland. So I'm here joining you tonight to talk a little bit more about the West 29th Street Open Street project. Earlier this year, the Project for Public Spaces, which is an organization, national organization that works on public space improvement, selected Cleveland for 2 projects, one in Public Square and then one on the West 29th Street Open Street. And I'm really excited about this in particular. There are going to be several initiatives actually across the city where we take a look at the public spaces in the public right-of-way. So that's the street, the city owns it, to think about what it looks like to turn a street into streets for people idea. So what does it look like to make it a bike and pedestrian area? And West 29th Street has a lot of the ingredients of a place that could do well with that. There's retail, there's institutions like the Cleveland Museum of Art. There are activations already, such as the upcoming Hingetown Jazz Fest. There was the City U stages. Those are sort of one-off closures. But the idea is, can it be an active space that is family-friendly? In particular, one of the focus areas of the West 29th Street Open Street is the idea of how can we make it a space that is friendly for specifically kids. I know as a parent, I have a 5-year-old consistently trying to manage the walking patterns on sidewalks and in streets with her, whether it's scooting or on a bike, and making sure that the area is sort of great for her as well, because we know that it's developmentally important for kids to be able to semi-independently travel. So the idea of this is we want to grab feedback, we want it to be supported and hosted by many of the families in the area, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about the engagement results and takeaways from the earlier engagement that happened in April of this year, as well as the survey that was also released about a month ago. We are continuously getting that feedback before any permanent designs are there. So in terms of existing conditions, I apologize, I don't think the fonts came through necessarily through the PowerPoint, and the pictures are smaller than was in the PDF. But this is West 29th Street, so if you're familiar, there is the fire station, which hosts Larder and Rising Star, as well as offices above. The Transformer Station Gallery on the west side is now owned by Cleveland Museum of Art, and there's a Transformer Station lawn, as well as upcoming residential and an existing house that faces Clinton Avenue. So when we looked at the existing conditions, we had to take several things into consideration. For example, we have to allow for fire access. So what that means is we need about 20 feet, in case of emergency, for those public safety vehicles to get through the street. We also looked at things like shade and the trees that exist there. So this is some of the existing photos of folks out on the sidewalk in front. there have been sort of family days hosted by Larder, which is one of the restaurants in that block. This is what the Transformer Station outdoor area currently looks like with coverings. And then there's this green space with some lovely shade from this tree. And the idea is that, this open street could connect those two spaces to create a pedestrian-safe area. This is other existing conditions looking 29th Street south of the fire station. So far, in terms of the types of engagements, Project for Public Spaces is our partner in this project. They are helping to run and manage the design process. So there were focus groups and interviews done back in April. There were about 30 total participants, and we invited block club members, we invited small businesses, specific people who might have an interest on that street in particular. So there was 4 stakeholder meetings with that mix of residents, business owners, and other community members all together. And then a workshop of about 100 community members attending an all-ages open house style workshop on a Saturday morning at Larder. So there was a mix, actually, quite a bit of kids as well as adults, and we did not count the babies or dogs. Participants used stickers to vote for preferences. There were Post-it notes to leave ideas or comments, and then there were also maps for drawing and designing. So here are some of those pictures of what we would consider a typical engagement process, where there's photos of different activities. Kids and adults can take stickers to vote on the activities that they liked. People could write on sticky notes, looking at the street. There was also a coloring activity, so one of our staff actually made this blank coloring sheet and allowed for kids to imagine what they would like to see, and they had everything from a Batman statue to shade and trees and seating, right? So it was great to see that creativity come out. So far, online surveys have come from 142 community members, and it was really important to us to understand who is answering the community survey. So you'll see that between folks that live within 2 blocks and within 5 blocks, which is that lowest line, you have about 35 plus 17, so 51%, I think, is within that immediate vicinity. Another 24.6% live in Ohio City, and then the last quarter or so lives outside Ohio City. And so people live in the area, enjoy spending time there. And we did understand the challenges from all of those groups, whether those focus groups, interviews, and the surveys. So, of course, traffic, parking, and circulation is a concern that we've heard about. And we are actively trying to look at the solutions in that area. An open street between West 29th Street, between Church and Clinton, would remove about 10 to 20 parking spots, depending on how far we stretch that. There is a lot of infrastructure needs, so there are broken street pavements and faded crosswalks, as well as drainage issues. There's some pooling of water, for example, along the street. And then there's a need for better access and increasing visibility across that intersection, as well as sort of that regular maintenance. What we heard in terms of what people liked best, it was a natural place to bump into friends. There seemed to be strong energy in the community. There was a sense that it was close to home, and there was a nice neighborhood character. I think somebody described it as, there are oftentimes in cities, like the Times Square area, where it's flashy with lots of entertainment. And then there's the spaces that are very neighborhood level, and it feels very local, and this is one of those spaces, the more local and neighborhood level. In terms of ideas from engagement, seating and landscaping were top choices. The idea that there should be physical barriers to limit traffic, to include various kinds of transportation like bike racks and scooters, and then also playable interactive art to encourage people to stick around, and also for kids to have a space as well. Here's a list of various activities and programs. I don't think I need to go necessarily into too much detail. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And then this is the breakdown of some of those activities based on the survey. So what activities or programs would attract you? And I'm happy to send you I think you have the PDF version that's larger, that can go around. So in terms of what to expect, we are going to do a temporary closure for 2 weeks to test the West 29th Street area, right? So, we draw inspiration from some of the other openings that we've seen, such as Market Avenue, where there was turf and seating. And we are going to work with NOACA, who is, I don't know why that's happening. NOACA, who is our area-wide transportation planning agency, to have what they call street supplies. So these are pop-up activities that you can put in the open street, such as benches. There is a parklet, which is a park for a parking spot, bike racks, different poles, and things to sort of populate the temporary closure area. So from August 24th, which is the Saturday, to September 8th, which is a Sunday, there will be this temporary closure. And there are opportunities. The Jazz Fest is happening over that weekend. Several of the businesses there are actually going to be hosting free and accessible programming in that space. And then even, somebody has a connection to some of the kids programming at NASA. We're hoping to have them come out on a Saturday or Sunday to really help activate it. But the idea here is that, sure, we want to have some of those programmed things, right? We want to have some of the art trucks and things like that come out. But there's actually quite a bit of interest from some of the surrounding residents and small businesses to host activities. And we're saying, hey, go ahead, as long as it's, within the purview of things that we would normally permit for a special event. So ideas have come up, like hosting a kids vendor fair, so getting some of the kids in the neighborhood to actually set up shop. I know that there are a few kids who do that already in the area. They sell stickers and bracelets, which is awesome. I've bought some myself. But kind of helping kids have a space to do that officially in the area. There are people who want to host book club meetings, potlucks, a dog-eat play date. These are all things that, not ideas from me or any of our planning staff, this is ideas from the community. And there is a calendar that is populating with some of these ideas that is, again, driven by residents. And, we will be happy to see the creative ideas that people have for this space and how people want to make it their own for the 2 weeks. Long term, we have yet to have a permanent design. We're slowly working through that process. At this point, with procurement, it is unlikely that we'll have it up by later this fall. If we're lucky, we'll have it by later this fall, November. If not, we'll be looking at next spring in 2025. So that is sort of the overarching timeline that we're looking at. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments. Yes.
All the things that you mentioned, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
For kind of those pop-up sorts of things all sound really lovely, and they sound like daytime activities. But the question I have is in terms of sort of cutoff times, and because we've had instances where unauthorized attempts for music venues, late night types of activities have been attempted in the neighborhood. So are you going to have a cutoff time, and what will be sort of the enforcement? Because that's a very close into residential area.
Great question. That's something we talked a lot about. So there will be rules for the open street. It is still street, so we're sort of basing a lot of that based on what we can do within a public right-of-way. But we are looking at times that correlate with the special improvement district and the ambassadors that will be in the area. So they start at 7 a.m. and then go until 11 p.m. We do have a noise ordinance, so people should not be doing noisy things after, I think it's 10 or 11 at night. And the goal is, people are welcome to use a space, but you have to be respectful, and no alcohol is allowed on the street. Pets must be on a leash. We discourage playing loud music that would interrupt sort of daily life. So those are the types of things that we will have posted around the open street for people to understand. Folks are welcome to use the street after 11 p.m., but it's kind of on your own in terms of there will be less ambassadors around, and so I think it's up to that person's discretion. Thank you. Other questions? Yes. And I would love to hear your name, if you could please share your name.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
My name is Susan Walters. I've lived in the neighborhood since the 80s. I guess I'm looking at this, and this looks like the plan for 29th or
It is 29th, yeah, West 29th, yeah.
So I guess I'm a little confused by, like, I love the idea of this programming. I think this is really great. I know that this was the intent for Market Avenue, and Market Avenue is a ghost town right now. Like, it seems like they started with this programming plan, and they had all this idea for what was going to happen down there, and then it was just now it's deserted. There's problems in the park, and the street is empty, and it looks horrible. We're spending all this money with the West Side Market, you know, for all these people to come into town, and at night, Market Avenue is like the scariest place to be. So
Okay.
I guess I live on 50th between Bridge and Franklin, so I live, you know, I've got, I care about both areas, all of Ohio City. I'm a little nervous about that we start these things and then we don't finish them. And I guess I'll leave this up to you, is what, are we going to finish Market Avenue before we start another project, or
Right.
how are we approaching that?
That's a great question. So Market Avenue, yes, it's on our radar. And in terms of this specific project, we did receive grant funds, so $100,000 to do the physical improvements to the street. And $100,000 actually doesn't go super far, but it'll be enough to get the chairs and the parklets and a public art piece, for example, playable furniture. And so the idea is, once those are installed, we'll have things there for people to actively go to. And again, through this temporary pop-up, we're hoping that, again, a lot of that organic activity will continue throughout. I think to your question about Market Avenue, it is something that we're very aware of. Jessica Trevisano's here. She works on the West Side, had worked on the West Side Market, and we're going to continue chewing on that because it sounds like there's things needed to do that. Yep. Sure. I don't believe there was a grant given to Market Avenue. Yeah. Nope. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions, comments? And is your name Marge?
It's March,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate this, but one other concern that I have is, because it's been a concern about what's going on in front of the firehouse, and you show it there with tables and chairs that really go all the way out to the street from the building, which is, my understanding is that is actually not consistent with what the city's requirements are for tables outside. I walk a lot in the neighborhood, and right now if you walk down the sidewalk between Church and Clinton on the west side of 29th for, I don't know, 6 months, someone correct me, you haven't been able to do it because of the housing construction. They have not complied with the requirements around construction and keeping the access open for the sidewalk. And if you go down the east side, you have to wind your way through chairs and tables that are in front of the firehouse. So as you add chairs, tables, et cetera, benches, how do people navigate that who want to traverse the area, get through on wheelchairs, you know, strollers, walkers, and making sure that that's a piece of it? Because right now you can't even do that on sidewalks. And it doesn't actually look like you're
Right, for ADA access. Yeah, that's very important. And I think for ADA access, we need at least the 4 feet of clearance, and preferably 6, right, in order to have a comfortable walking environment or rolling environment. And that's something we're happy to coordinate with the actual businesses. The resident that is having a construction on their home has moved all their construction materials out of the right-of-way by our request. So we're hoping to really encourage that, because we will need to have that access. This setup is just for the temporary 2-week, which is a little lighter from, you know, the public safety access and general access, and all of the things that are going down the middle of it are movable for public safety needs. When we do the design for the permanent, we will have essentially the 20-foot clearance planned and baked into it, so that anybody of any ability should be able to walk or roll through it. the problem that we're trying to solve now is how do we make it an even surface so that there aren't any hazards. So that is something we're thinking about and have not yet cracked. So we will work on that. Yep. Anything else? Okay, right here.
Hi, I'm Anna Lorch. I
Hi.
I live on Bailey now, but I used to live in the Dexter, so
Mhm.
very, very close to that.
Yep.
Just a quick question. Is this closure definitely happening, or are we going through these motions to see, like, maybe
The
we
permanent closure, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, we are intending to do the permanent closure, but our design process has been a lot slower than we thought. We originally thought we were going to be able to close it for the open street by this fall, and it's just taken a lot longer than we anticipated. So, yes, over here.
Hi.
Yes. Oh,
Jim.
yes.
Yeah, Jim Mysak. One of the concerns that was brought up in the previous meetings is that with the loss of parking on West 29th, it might put pressure on Church Avenue,
Mhm.
which is already problematic for the people who live there
Yep.
to find parking. And so what's the status of like residential permits for Church Avenue residents so
Okay.
that they have a place to park?
Good question. So we actually have a presentation coming up right after me about parking generally speaking in Ohio City. Parking will always, in an area where there is interest, is always going to be high pressure. I think one of our goals is to unlock some more parking on Detroit Avenue if possible. We believe that metered parking in the commercial areas will also lead to more turnover for those specific people just coming for businesses, right? And Matt can go into much more detail about what we've observed, what the research shows about parking. Now, in terms of residential permits, that is something that it's an idea that we've been asked to think about, and we don't have a great answer for that yet. But in terms of the whole area and the district, we're thinking about how visitors come and utilize the parking, as well as other multimodal opportunities. Thank you. Yep. Yes.
Meg Sattler.
Hi.
Mentioned a couple of times the ambassadors and planning around the ambassador hours. Does that mean that it's essentially there's gonna be a sort of pseudo staff person there all the time, or an OCI employee,
Yep.
or?
Yeah, so I'll answer it both in the temporary and the permanent. So the temporary 2-week closure will have some staff members available just on site. So Brittany Pabon, who's the Near West planner, and I believe Julia will be there, working outside, as weather permits, just to keep an eye on everything. And then the special improvement ambassadors will essentially kind of do what they usually do, which is roll through the area, keep their eyes on everything, help with maintenance. And then we also encourage, we have it in our rules, our poster, that if there's trash, that we invite you, the users, to handle the trash and the recycling kind of as it's all of our spaces, right? In terms of the permanent, again, that would be very much based on similar model where the special improvement ambassadors could come through and sort of keep an eye on things and maintain things. But we won't have staff sitting there all year round. So it'll be up to whether it's business owners to keep an eye on things. We know there are security cameras on some of the buildings as well. So that's what it'll look like. Thanks. Yes.
Hi, Jill Creation. I live over close to Market Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
but my concern is if you're relying on the business owners, the businesses are closed during the times where there's trouble. So.
Where there's people, is that your question?
Well, just again, I just don't think we have enough ambassadors to cover the area and to cover the hot spots at the times when we've got the
Yeah.
flare-ups, which is in the evenings, and
Mm-hmm.
so relying on the business owners is not really I don't think it's a
Yeah.
useful solution.
Maybe I can clarify that. So again, during the daytime, right, there's sort of all hours between the coffee shop and then the lunch and dinner spots, and then the sort of early evening time uses where there will be some presence of people. We're not necessarily, so for the overnight, you're asking about the overnight when there's not really any businesses open from like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. We would, at that point, if something happens, would have to rely on public safety, right? Just like anywhere else, to put in a call and to request their presence in case of any activity that's illicit. I'm trying to get to the heart of your question, which was not relying on them. I think the other thing that that was interesting to me was that when we did talk with some of the residents and small businesses, their thoughts were that, you know, they have had things out, they've had tables out on the sidewalk, they've had planters out, and those typically have not been tampered with. And so if the concern is around, you know, items going missing or being damaged, again, that is something that we've observed has not yet happened. And so we're hoping that through the community process of everyone like really taking care of the space, that'll be okay, right? Is that, yeah, yeah, right.
It's the feeling of safety walking through Market Square when it's dark. It's the noise.
Oh, are you talking about Market Square?
Yeah, and I'm just saying
Okay. Yep.
I may be projecting
Sure.
what's going to happen
Yep.
in a similar space. You know,
Okay.
when you know, assuming that people are going to shut down because it's
Got it.
11 o'clock at night.
Thank you. We'll take
I
that
hope
feedback
that's
into
the case.
consideration. Yep,
It's you know, it hasn't been the
Yep.
case
Yep.
for us.
great. Thank you.
Brian Daly.
Hi.
Curious if this is portion of the street successful, is there any intention of extending it to Detroit?
Not at this time, not for this, I'll say this, not for 2024, 2025. You know, we've discussed this with Project for Public Spaces and Ohio City Inc., and at this time, it's really between Church and Clinton. Thanks.
One plug also, the electric charger is there too. So, and then I know that's used by a lot in the neighborhood, so that'll be nice to have space for that, for folks to do something when they're charging. Since it's going to be closed for sure, is my understanding, what is the goal of the 2-week try? Like, what specifically are you trying to learn
Yep.
from that process?
That's a great question. So we will have a QR code on site as well as some surveys that people can fill out. It's asked simple questions like, when were you here? What time of day? What was the activity that you enjoyed? Did you have any concerns or observe any issues that you wanted to give feedback to us? So I think rather than do more sort of theoretical surveys or theoretical design exercises, we actually wanted to get in the space and encourage folks to engage with it in real time. So I think we're hoping to learn, you know, what kind of activities are enjoyed by folks so that when we get towards that permanent design, we can include those items. For example, if we want more space for, you know, scooters, kids trying to ride bikes, then we can implement that into the design. Or if we want to have more, you know, climbable activities, seating, then we can include that into the design. Does that make sense? Great, thank you. All right, okay, good. I will stay close.
Cool.
Sure.
She's going to stay close, so if you have any other questions, she'll be around. But I did want to jump back in our agenda real quick and have our current board president, Alex Frondorf, come on up to introduce our new interim executive director.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Frondorf. I am the board chair of Ohio City Inc., and I am very, very happy and very pleased to announce that the board has unanimously voted to ask Jane Platten, a longtime homeowner resident of Ohio City, to be our interim director. Over the next few months, Jane will be tasked with and is tasked with making sure that the organization is on the firmest possible foundation as we search for a new permanent executive director. So when we hire that new executive director, we are handing off an organization that is in tip-top shape and tip-top health. So Jane, many of you know her from her time, past 2 decades living in this neighborhood, has served as the chief of staff and executive vice president at Metro Health, the chief of staff at the county prosecutor's office, and ran the county board of elections. her wealth of experience and relationships in our community and public service, I think, will serve our organization and our neighborhood very, very well. So I'm going to introduce Jane to say a few words and to congratulate her and to thank her for taking on this role. So thank you, Jane.
So I would just say, number one, thank you for having me serve in this role to the Board of OCI. I love Ohio City so much. I love Ohio City so much. I moved here in 2001. I know that there are folks that have been in the neighborhood far longer than me, but I do consider myself kind of a pioneer because I feel like I'm old enough and I've been here long enough. But let me just say, Ohio City is this unbelievably charming, vibrant, amazing neighborhood. And I take it personally. So I'm here for an interim period, but I want to make sure that you understand that I'm not a seat warmer. And I make decisions. I have a vision. I'm going to assist in figuring out the best next permanent executive director. I have a house on West 30th Street. I understand the breadth of this neighborhood, 100%. And when I say neighborhood, I'm talking about all of Ohio City. But we also have to be pragmatic in making sure that the residents come together, the businesses come together, and the visitors come together at certain points of our existence. And we need, as an organization, OCI Inc. needs, as an organization, to respond to the elasticity of the relationships that we have with those three categories. And I'm not going to be here for a long-term period, but I think while I'm here, we can do some really, really good work to prepare for the next generation of leadership at OCI. OCI should serve, I believe, as the pillar of the community that convenes and also that reacts to the changing dynamics, if you will, of neighborhoods and of community. But the word is community, in my opinion. So anyhow, that's my short-term vision, and I really appreciate being here, and I'm very happy that there are people like you who actually care enough to be here, so thank you.
Thank you, Jane. We're very happy she's here too. So without further ado, I will let Matt Moss come on up here from the city.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I'm Matt Moss. I'm the manager for strategic planning for the Cleveland City Planning Commission. And I have some slides today to talk about one of my favorite topics. I think one of your favorite topics too, street parking. So let me get this rolling. Let me start off before I explain what's behind me that on behalf of the city, I want to apologize, we want to apologize for the rollout that happened here in Ohio City. Definitely not what we intended and what we had planned for. Sorry about that. That's not okay. This is the process we wanted to do, and I'm going to talk through it real quick, and then I'll go through some more information about on-street parking, and then I'll have some time to answer some questions, and I have also some updates for you all. So the general process we took, we started downtown, now we're starting to look at several neighborhoods. We want to assess the existing zones, so we're looking at neighborhoods that already have those coin-operated meters in them. Ohio City has some of those. I'll have a map of that in a second. Plus ourselves, city planning, and the public works department, so that includes the division of parking and traffic engineering. We wanted to look at, okay, where is there need for more parking management on our streets? So think like the commercial streets in Ohio City, Detroit, West 25th, Lorraine. That's where there currently aren't those physical meters, but there's still demand for that curb space. And so we develop a map, we develop a plan, we share it with the councilperson, and then we make some revisions based on their feedback, their opinions, especially in terms of phasing and how it should be implemented. We revise the map, and then the next step was to share it with you all, with businesses, with other organizations. Obviously that didn't happen this time, but that's the plan. And then make sure you're aware that this is happening, share the best timeline we can provide. There are a lot of details and moving parts and nuts and bolts in terms of how we actually go out and make these changes. I'd be happy to answer questions about that if you do have questions, but there's quite a bit of work under the hood that needs to happen. And then we post notices. And so our goal is to post notices in zones a minimum of 2 weeks in advance before the new meters start coming out. If you've been downtown at all in the last, I don't know, since October or so of last year, you probably saw those signs that say wave goodbye to meters, the new meter's coming, the new meter system's coming. That would be what you would see next. And then we would implement those new zones. And so in areas where there are existing meters, I'll talk about this more, I have an enforcement slide next, or coming up. In areas where there are coin-operated meters, enforcement would happen immediately because those are areas, again, from 7 to 6, on weekdays that you're expected to pay for parking. In areas where there's new parking meter zones, so where we're charging where we previously didn't charge, there'd be generally a grace period about 2 weeks. And so instead of getting a ticket saying you didn't pay your parking or you overstayed your session, you're gonna get a warning for at least 2 weeks. And then we wanna work on evaluating and reporting what happens. So part of why we have this new technology is because we want to collect a lot more information. And so just to give you some background, downtown, we began in October of 2023 putting out the new Park Mobile signs, establishing the digital zones. We installed those by the end of the year in 2023. Just this past June, we started putting out the pay stations. And so there's another aspect of this that's right now just downtown where we have physical stations where you can still pay by coin, you can pay with a card. Those are downtown. The neighborhoods we're looking at next are Ohio City / some parts of the flats, a few parts of the flats, Detroit Shoreway, and University Circle. Again, we're looking at neighborhoods that have coin meters in them now, where we're currently charging for parking. So what are we trying to do with this program? What's our goal? Our goal really simply is to provide convenient and available street parking. That's what the city is trying to do. We want parking to be convenient and available. The way we're doing that is with Park Mobile. That's a modernization tool that lets us offer flexibility in payment. Instead of coins, you can now pay with card, you can pay online, you can pay by calling a number, you can pay by texting. It's a lot easier to use and provides more options. And then this also gives us new tools. So we can now be demand responsive. So in areas where even if we're charging for parking, it's full all the time, especially when people need spaces, we can respond to that. We can collect data and analyze what's going on in parking zones, and we can more easily enforce the rules. Just a brief slide on again, like why we're doing this. Generally parking can be convenient, available, and free. So convenient means it's close to where you want to go. Generally you can park, if it's really convenient, you're parking exactly where you need to be or where you want to be. It can be available in that there's actually a space for you to put your car. Or free, which means it's no charge. You can park for free. Generally in high demand areas, so parts of downtown, like West 25th Street's a great example, when it's free, it's usually not available. And if it's available and if it's free and convenient, it's usually not available, like on West 25th. If it's free and available, it's usually not very convenient. That means it's probably far away from where you want to go. If it's convenient and available, that means it probably can't be free, because in order to encourage people who might not need to park there, who are parking there for a long time and don't need to go anywhere for several hours or more, if it's free, they can just leave their car there all day long. And that's a challenge if you're a visitor or a resident who wants to park and do some shopping or visit a business or whatever your needs may be. And so that's why pricing the curb is important. As demand increases for this space, price is one of, if not the most effective tools we have to try to make it convenient and available. So I have a map here. I also have some paper copies if you want one. I don't have enough for everyone, but I'd be happy to talk about it. Also, we have another source for this online, and I'll plug that in a second. Generally, what this map shows are the 3 phases of the plan for Ohio City. So in green, that's existing meter areas. So those are areas, again, that have the coin-operated meters. That's phase 1, and it's a little hard to see. Like I said, I got paper copies I can give you a closer look at. Phase 2 are shown in red. Those are areas where, again, there's commercial streets, Lorraine Avenue, West 25th, namely, where there is street parking, but it's not metered. There's no charge to park in those spaces at any time of day. Those are areas we want to expand with the mobile payment option. And then phase 3 are areas that are adjacent to those commercial districts where we know people are parking because usually the street on the main street, like 25th again, or Lorraine, is full. And so they're parking on these side streets that are usually mixed use or also commercial, but are right next to those destinations where people want to go. And so that's phase 3. Here's a more detailed list breakdown in terms of what those phases are, roughly where they are, and what our expected timeline is. So starting Monday, which is the 19th, yesterday, in the next 2 to 4 weeks, you'll start to see those signs go up. In those areas where there are those coin-operated meters, you'll see the Park Mobile signs go up. Phase 2, which is extending along West 25th on the Lorraine, namely also parts of Bridge by the market, that'll be 2 weeks following phase 1. So if we get it done in 2 weeks, it'll start 2 weeks after that. If it takes us a little longer, it'll just be 2 weeks after we're done with the green areas. And then that'll update those main streets with the time-limited parking. Phase 3, blue, is going to likely follow phase 2 and take, again, 2 to 4 weeks roughly. The reason why I can't be so certain about that is we're going to see how the rollout goes. And I'll get to that in again, just another second. This will be streets like Fulton, Detroit, those West 28th, parts of West 28th, Bridge, J, those areas that are near those commercial districts. So that'll be about 2 to 3 weeks following the red area. So enforcement, how will enforcement work? We want to, again, ensure that there's some parking available throughout the day. The goal of our enforcement is to provide convenient and available parking. Make sure there's some parking available and that it's conveniently located. So in existing meter zones, in areas of the neighborhood where there are those physical coin-operated meters, enforcement's going to take place right away, just like I said. In areas where there aren't coin-operated meters and we're expanding the paid parking zones, there'll be a 2-week grace period. So if you park in that area and you don't know that you have to pay, or if you park in that area and you overstay your stay during the paid parking times, you'll get a warning from parking enforcement, and that'll be for about 2 weeks. And then after that, they'll start enforcing with fines. I threw this slide up here because I want to give you all a visual of what the signs actually look like and what they mean. They're pretty straightforward. The number at the top is your zone number. So if you're paying on the app, or if you're paying online, if you're paying via phone, that zone number is the one you want to give to determine and make sure that you're in the right parking area. You can also pay through a variety of options. There is a mobile phone app. You can pay online just by scanning the QR code or going to the website. If you don't have if you do have a smartphone and you don't want to download an app or visit a website, you can text the number and work through some text messages to pay. If you don't have a smartphone, if you know someone who doesn't, there's a number to call too, and you can pay over the phone through their automated system. And that's the box at the bottom. So zone number, ways you can pay, and then also number if you need help or if you don't have a smartphone. This is what you can expect, again, in the next week or so. You'll start to see the signs go up in those existing meter areas. There'll be the wave goodbye to meter sign. It's the blue sign you see under the post. You'll see these on the existing meter heads. They'll start putting the stickers on the front as well. Then you'll see the street signs go up like the one I just showed you. That'll be for phase 1 areas. Eventually you'll see more we'll have signs that'll go out too in the new areas that they won't say the wave goodbye to meters because there aren't any meters there. It'll just be the blue sign below that. And you'll start to see that roll out over that timeline I just shared. We do have a new web page that's live as of today. It's clevelandohio.gov/street parking. So you can go to that website and read all the information pretty much that I just shared with you is on that website. We have a larger image of the sign as well. The map for Ohio City is on that website. You can look at it there. We also have a comment form up. If you're looking at this map, you're seeing maybe a street you park on or someone you know parks on that maybe doesn't have a driveway, for example, or doesn't have off-street parking, and you want to flag that for us or you have a concern about it, you can leave a comment and we'll do our best to address it. And the last thing I want to mention too before I take questions, there was a question that came up when Joyce was up here about permit parking. The city does have a permit parking program right now. It's not easy to use. It's really challenging. You have to work with the Department of Public Safety. You need to get a large percentage of your neighbors to support it. It does exist, and we do have some residential permit parking areas in the city, like in Little Italy, for example. If you feel an immediate urgency to do that in your area, you can contact me and we can talk about it. We are taking a look at how to revamp that permit parking program. That will require legislation. We need to make some changes. And so that's on our horizon. We're working on it now. I don't have a timeline for you, unfortunately, but it's on our to-do list and we're working on it. And if you want to be involved in that or if you want to have input into that, I'd love to connect with you and share some thoughts or ideas so you could help us shape that program if you'd like. And that's it. Questions?
Hi, Hi, I'm Heidi Corcos. I live on J. So are you saying J is going to be paid parking?
The goal is for J basically between West 25th and West 26th. So just that simple stretch in front of the co-working space.
Oh, okay.
That's
okay.
right. Yeah, the rest of J is not changing.
Okay. Oh,
I have a map. I have a map I can show you too if you want. It'll be a little clearer. Perfect. Yes, sir.
Are most of the parking districts that you're going to be changing the meter system on already metered parking for other, the old style meters, or are these new areas that will be having
Implemented.
meters put on them?
It'll be both. So the first step, which will be over the next few weeks, starting basically today, will be the areas where there are those existing coin-operated meters. The coin-operated meters will still work. If you have coins and you want to park, and you can still use those coin-operated meters, that's totally fine. But the app will also be available. The online option will be available in those areas first. And then we'll be extending it along Lorraine, for example, because there are only a few parts of Lorraine that have the physical meters. And so we'll be extending it along the corridor over the next, roughly 4 to 6 weeks.
So right now, the way that the signs read, it's a 2-hour maximum. We have a hotel coming on 26 that's going to get rid of 96 parking spots. What happens with all these cars? I mean, there's businesses that people drive into. We are going to run into an issue.
Yeah, great question. So right now, all we're doing is rolling out the new technology. The hours aren't changing. The rate, which is 50 cents for an hour, with a 35-cent fee if you pay online, that's not changing. And we're not charging for weekends. We do have, through the legislation that was passed last year, the ability to extend the hours to 10 p.m. and to charge on weekends for certain hours, and to adjust the rate. And so the goal right now is we want to get the technology out as fast as we can in the next month and a half or so, and that's when we can start collecting usage data. That data will also inform the next steps we take in terms of if we extend hours, if we change rates, if we start charging on weekends. This is all information we need in order to start doing that. My expectation and the work that I will be endeavoring to do, it's not entirely up to me, we do make sure that you know about those changes before we make them. So, but these are all tools we now have in our toolbox. So we have the ability to adjust the price, the hour, and the days. And our goal is to slowly start doing that based on demand and need. Right. Yeah, there's a space issue and there's also a management issue. And so we can't easily solve the space issue because we only have as much street curb space as we have. What we can do is do a better job to manage it, because right now we're not doing much of that at all in Ohio City. Are you allowed to ask questions? Oh, okay.
Okay, from Kate Nagel from our YouTube stream. Ohio City is a largely residential area and has many homes without driveways. When was the consideration of metering the area, and will you support residents who no longer have a place to park?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we do have that existing residential permit parking program. Like I said, it's not very user-friendly. It's hard to establish. Our goal right now is we want to start revamping that and taking a look at what that would look like from a legislative perspective. So it's on our radar. We're working on it. We got a lot to do, and it's one of those things. Sure. Yeah, so like I said, if you want to work with us now so the question was, how can we get residential permit parking now, even if the program isn't that easy to use? If you want to have residential permit parking under the current program on your street, let us know, and we can do our best to help you navigate that process. It's it's way too much to go over right now in the time we have, but if you give me your contact information, we'll connect and I can walk you through it. You generally need 80% of the residents within the area to approve to sign a petition and send it to the city in order to start the process to get permit parking. There are complications related to guest parking, guest passes, how you actually get the pass. Trust me, it's not. I'm not trying to discourage you. It is difficult, but I'm happy to do my best to help you understand it and work with you to try to make it happen if it makes sense.
All right, this one comes from Grace Myers on our Facebook feed. She has two that are kind of tied together. Who determined that paid spaces were needed to expand in Ohio City? And then are there opportunities to reform the maps since the Bridge Avenue meters have gone up? Bridge has been a ghost town, and my street J has become unnavigable.
Yeah, so if you have a comment or concern about, especially the phase 3 areas, which are the areas in blue on the map, leave us a comment on the comment form online. It's on the website, clevelandohio.gov/street parking. There's a comment form. Let us know and be as specific as you can. The street, bridge between 25th and 28th, if that's your area of concern, for example. And we'll take a look at it. We'll reach out to you and have a conversation if that is the right thing to do. And what was the first part of the question again? Who decided? Oh yeah, okay. So it was the city. It was the Public Works and the operations cluster. We field a lot of concerns and comments and questions about the availability or lack thereof of street parking. And again, the best tool we have to manage that is in commercial areas during busy hours is to charge for that, because right now you can leave your car. Anyone can leave their car on any of these streets all day, and that's okay. And we want to change that because we want to make sure that you have available and convenient parking, whether you're a resident or a visitor, on the commercial corridors. Ooh, is the mic working? Great. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great question. So the question was, how are we going to measure the impact? It's a lot harder to do than to just have these zones and say, okay, we can tell roughly how many spaces are in each zone, who's parking where. It is a challenge. And so the way we know that we've gotten, again, complaints, questions, concerns from residents like yourselves in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods where they feel like the residential street, happens in my neighborhood in Tremont, where people who are visiting restaurants or retail establishments, they'll park on the residential side street because they can't find a space on the main street. And so what we can do through the street parking program, by modernizing it, by revamping it, by responding to the demand for the parking, is by having more spaces available on the main streets. That means there's fewer people parking on the residential side streets who are there for a few hours on the weekend or in the evening or maybe during the day. That's the best tool we have to mitigate that challenge you have on residential side streets, especially if you don't have off-street parking. That's where we can look at tools like residential permit parking as well, if that's really a challenge. But our expectation, our plan is that the convenience and the availability is going to be worth the nominal fee it costs to have that space. That's what we've seen in other cities and other parts of downtown, for example. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so for those online, the question was, how are we going to encourage turnover if we're not changing the hours and we're not charging on weekends and the price is staying the same? Over the next 4 to 6 weeks, we are implementing the new technology, the Park Mobile app, the new signs, the transition. After that, we're going to use the information that starts coming in to do things like adjust the hours. We have the legislative authority is what it's called. The ordinance that was passed last year allows the city administration, the departments, to charge up to 10 p.m. and to adjust the rate and to charge on weekends. We have that authority to do that through council. And so after we get the technology out and it's familiar to people, especially those who are visiting the neighborhood, that's when we can start to adjust the hours and times to respond to actually when it's needed in the evenings and weekends. So it is in our plan. We don't have a timeline yet for you, but like I said, when we do, we'll bring it back to you so you're aware. That's right. So the question was, if businesses are closed, do we need to charge for parking? Do we have the ability to adjust that? And the answer is yes. So we have not just the legislative authority under the ordinance, but the technology lets us say, for these hours, it's this much to park. And that could be free, or it could be really cheap. It could be a quarter, it could be 50 cents. But in the evenings, when it's more in demand, that's called demand responsive pricing. And so we do have that flexibility through this technology. We did not have it when it was a coin operated meter because it's just not possible to do that. So that's a new tool we have because of the technology. And our goal is to get, like I said, to get the technology out there and then start adjusting when it's charged, what the price is, and the days. So the question was, should you expect a reduction when businesses aren't open or places in demand? I won't tell you what you should expect right now. Our goal is, again, to get the technology out there and then come back with a timeline on any changes of price, hours, or weekend charging. So it sounds like there's a lot of interest and support in that. I think that's a great idea as well, and we're working on it, and we're trying to make it happen as fast as we can. Sure. Sure. Okay, so I'll try to summarize that question briefly. The question was, can we be more responsive to residents instead of businesses when it comes to street parking? I mean, that's what you said, so. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the honest answer I can give you is that it's not the highest priority right now in the city of Cleveland to address this. We have issues with traffic safety, with people dying on our streets. There's a lot we're working on right now at City Hall. And this is something important and we want to spend time on it. And I'm here telling you as a city employee that we are spending time on it. And we want to work with residents in good faith who want to see this happen and see this change. And I can't promise you when it'll happen or how long it'll take, but we're working on it. Asking if none of them were doesn't seem right. I do. Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question is, the question was, how are we going to consistently enforce this, especially if we expand hours, right? If I'm reading into your question just a little bit. Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have an enforcement plan for you. I think that's something we could come back. I can certainly ask if that's something we can come back and present more detail on, specifically for Ohio City. That's partly why we need to start charging more and potentially at slightly higher rates over time for street parking, so we can have the staff to enforce that. That's our plan and our goal. I think that's why it's oftentimes difficult to be specific about when we might be expanding hours or raising price or even expanding the zones beyond what we've already shown you, because we're trying to balance all these things. What's our capacity to enforce? What's our capacity to maintain this infrastructure too? These are all considerations that generally don't get hashed out at community meetings, but we struggle with it and we're working on it at the city. So I don't have a specific answer for you today, I'm sorry, but that's something I can take note of and I can try to come back and give you an update. Like I said, if you have more questions, I can come talk to you if you have a specific question in the back, but leave a comment online and we'll do our best to respond to you. So thank you for the time.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So next up, we have Wesley Harper of Horton Harper Architecture, looking at their design for the proposed apartment building at 2032 West 26th Street.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Wes Harper with Horton Harper Architects. And what, I just hit the arrow here? Down? Okay. So we're here to discuss the proposed 11 unit apartment building at 2032 West 26th Street. And so our aerial map here shows us on the western side of West 26th Street between Lorraine Avenue and Keene Court. We have the Boaz structure to our east across 26th Street, and then 2 surface parking lots on the north and south side of the parcel. Here we have the existing conditions of the site, minus the snow, thankfully. So you can see right now it's obviously vacant. There's a handful of trees in the rear, but otherwise it's essentially a grass lot. Of course, this is looking north on West 26th Street towards Lorraine Avenue, essentially at Keene Court. And then you can see the for sale sign between the 2 cars at the left where the structure would be located. The proposed site plan is essentially filling most of the site with this 3-story, 11-unit apartment building. We do have a central courtyard which would allow natural light and ventilation into the apartments towards the middle. It's roughly just under 9,000 square feet in total, and basically 6,500 square feet of new apartment space. The rear yard setback would be 5 feet, and then the other setbacks would be 0. And we're currently working on a renovation and addition to the existing structure at 2621 Lorraine, which is a little bit towards the rear of the structure. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but the structure that's being attached to the Lorraine Avenue building would also be a 0 lot line which would basically share the property line with this structure. As for the physical design of the building, again, 3 stories facing West 26th Street. We do have first floor units facing 26th, so in an effort to give a little bit of privacy and buffer to that space, we have kind of a built-in planter space with windows to the unit a bit beyond. The second and third floors are clad in a cement board with kind of a dark bronze window frame system. Flanking the building, essentially acting as the firewall on either side, is a CMU block with an alternating pattern of color. It's a very subtle detail, but something that we think will make these facades feel considered on both the north and south facades. Here you can see a view more towards the northwest. You can start to see how the building opens up towards the middle for that courtyard with an opening for natural ventilation and light into those rear units. Here we're looking more towards the southwest, and again you can see that pattern of the masonry. It does get a bit offset towards the middle to represent the courtyard that's on the other side, but essentially it's that striped pattern going from east to west. Here you can also see the main entry into the structure, essentially where the young lady is standing towards the middle and lit. So that would basically lead to a walkway that gets into the main vestibule and then leads to the stairway that leads up to the upper level floors. So here we have the first floor plan. You can see the planting area towards the right, kind of giving some privacy to the kitchen, living and dining room facing West 26th Street. And then in the rear, the 5-foot setback, we have a patio filling up that space for the rear unit. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We were approved for schematic design approval at the City Planning Commission a couple weeks ago and have the block club meeting, I believe, in the beginning of September. Thank you. Yes, City Planning, we went to a couple weeks ago and were approved for schematic, and then we were also at Near West Design Review and got the same approval. Yeah, since we're building to the lot lines by code, the building code, we're not allowed to have window openings in that facade. So it's strictly a building code issue. Yes. No parking. Correct. We're in a transit-oriented development district, and we'd be taking advantage of that zoning exception. Yes, sir. It would be north of Keene Court. So there's 3 parcels between Keene and Lorraine. And so here you could see, yeah, the parking lot to the north and then to the south as well. Yes, right here. Yeah. Well, the units, we'll go back to the floor plan here. On the upper floors, we have 2 units towards the east side of the building and 2 towards the west. And so those 2 units in the middle obviously need natural light and ventilation. So we've inserted this courtyard to act as that opening, I suppose. And then we're proposing, maybe a unique tree that would fit into that courtyard and create a nice space in there for the first floor units, and then for the residents above that are looking down into it. South of this, it's a surface parking lot. Same with the north. Yes. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? I did not, but we are working on that project as well. So we're comfortable with that 0 lot line with our development. Well, not my development, but the development that would be happening there butting up against this project. Yes. Yes, it's essentially, if I'm not mistaken, a 1/4 mile radius from each bus stop that has 15-minute service, and then any rapid stop as well. Yes. Yeah, price point, you know, I'm not exactly sure what that would be, but they're roughly 550 square feet to 600. So they would be relatively lower to some of the higher end apartments that we have surrounding us here on 25th. Yes. Yeah, we're working on that. We think at the very least in the units, but then we're looking to figure out some space on the interior to accommodate that. With these being smaller units, we see this being marketable to you know, people with their first jobs out of college, service industry workers that would be working and living in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Wesley. All right. So we're going to move into our final agenda item of the night, which is the proposed hotel development at 1960 West 26th. I'm welcoming to the stage Dan Whalen.
Hello, everyone. Just making sure you're still awake. Hello, my name is Dan Whalen. Just an introduction about me. I have lived and been around the Ohio City neighborhood a long time. I started out as a freshman in St. Ignatius High School in 2003, and didn't finish there, but started there, and was responsible for the development of the intro project at 25th and Lorraine, right here in the neighborhood at the main corner, what I consider the main corner. And every piece is part of it, and I dealt with the Solo Block Club at the time, got to know a lot of those folks. I'm not sure if any of you are in that block club in particular, but and then of late have been getting to know other block club members in the nearby vicinity, but in developing that project have gotten to know numerous business owners, obviously a longtime stakeholder with Ohio City Incorporated. I sit on the SID board as the treasurer as well, so implementing the ambassador programs and sort of the dollars and cents and where those things are applied and focusing on target areas, all that kind of stuff is things that I'm ingrained in on a daily basis. And so neighborhood's very important to me, just like Jane was talking about when she was up here. Not a fly-by-night kind of out-of-towner coming in and trying to do things that are not relevant, but instead I'm embedded here. I lived at 32nd and Clinton for a few years, and now my wife and I live in Tremont. So what we're going to be presenting to you today is really informational on the proposed project here at the corner of West 26th and Lorraine Avenue. I have Amy Haney behind me. She's with DLR Group, who is the architect on the project. Don't really have too many design-related questions or answers yet because we're still in early days, but if any pop up, we can try to answer. This was my spiel. I was with Harbor Bay, which was the company that developed the intro project. I recently left in April to start my own firm, and so right now it's me, a couple helpers in the background part-time, but it's a one-man shop for the time being. Site location here. So plan bottom on the short side, you've got Lorraine Avenue. Obviously, Lorraine runs east and west. St. Ignatius Practice Field to the west side. And the site runs parallel to 26th Street, where Market Avenue kind of dead ends directly into the midpoint of that, where there's currently kind of a toll booth pay station where sometimes there's someone sitting in there and sometimes there's not. But it is entirely a surface parking, as everyone is very much aware, especially with today's topics. And it has the appendage that you kind of see extending out between Great Lakes Brewing and the small 2- and 3-story buildings to the south that taps into 28th Street. So really there's 3-sided frontage on this site for all 3 of the streets abutting it. And hard to see, so I'll run through this. The total program is about 95,000 square feet. To put that into perspective, Intro was about 525,000 square feet, so much, much smaller, only about 20% of the size. Obviously a much smaller site. 3 food and beverage venues. Some of those are smaller in nature and really meant to serve hotel guests, but also accessible to the public. About 130 rooms, a little bit of wellness, and some event and meeting space, and on-site parking of about 80 stalls. And I'm sure we'll get into questions about that as well. This is kind of a diagram. It's not meant to be an architectural rendering at this point, but it does kind of fit that entire program that we were just talking about on the prior slide. Right now, we're anticipating that parking would go 1 level underground. We're still working out if that's going to be the case or not, but that really does allow us to create the best pedestrian experience and the best interaction with the local businesses that abut this site, with Market Avenue, with Great Lakes Brewing, and with some of the stuff that's going on, like the project that was just proposed right before this. And so the shape of the building is an 8 or 9 story building. This current rendering suggests 8 stories, which is smaller than United Bank building, and it is by right and within the zoning of the height that's currently allowed there. It also is within the transit-oriented zone, and so we technically don't have to build parking or seek a variance. We're trying to work on a practical solution that incorporates a managed solution that serves both the hotel and some of the existing stakeholders in the vicinity. Aerial site plan, kind of hard to see, but it really just reiterates the orientation of the building. Right now, we're considering the main front door directly on plane with Market Avenue, so facing east. So if you're standing at the market or across the street or down Market Avenue, you'd be looking straight down at the front door of the project. And really secondary entrances and retail storefronts along Lorraine. Obviously, Lorraine's a much busier street. 26th Street is already pretty calm and narrow, and it makes for a nice, easy drop-off spot, especially since there'll be more pedestrian traffic than there is now, and really at hours of the day where a hotel runs 24/7, which I think helps pertain to safety and eyeballs on the street and activity at times when we all know Market Square Park can become less desirable after hours. This is the building footprint as it stands today. I'm not sure why it's coming through weird, but again, kind of just reiterating. One thing that it does show is to the top of the plan, access to the below-grade parking deck would come off 28th Street, as would the service vehicles for things like trash deliveries, any sort of larger truck traffic and electrical things like that all happen off the back of the building adjacent to the existing docks where Great Lakes currently has their semi-trailers, as does Dave's if you go half block to the north. We are just starting to get into our design, and so the architectural imagery here is really just inspiration, but what it shows is a lot of brick, and not just flat brick, but really unique patterning and fenestration that will help us kind of tie in to the historic architecture in the neighborhood while also kind of keeping a contemporary lens on it and adding depth and interest to the facade. Hopefully you'll notice that with the amount of care that was taken with green space around the Intro project, really to the south where we have green space and a dog park, in the center of the building where we added about 35,000 square feet of green space and restaurant patios, and even around the perimeter, really just larger planter beds with trees and things of that nature that get lit up seasonally, and really just softening a lot of the kind of larger swaths of concrete. And our intention would be generally the same here. So again, this just kind of provides different vistas around the building and really scale to stuff that's adjacent in the neighborhood. And again, it's very early days on the design, so we're not really talking specifically about architecture at this point, just really about the use itself, and about the program, and about kind of the relative density of the project, and obviously associated parking and things that'll be happening within the hotel. And just kind of some more features of design that we might anticipate putting on the interiors and creating hopefully a special place. I think as it pertains to the hotel itself, it's a glaring need west of the river in Ohio City, and really in any of the neighborhoods nearby. There's not a single place to stay that's designed as a place to stay. And so I think there's huge demand. People who come to Cleveland, whether it's for a night, a weekend, a staycation, a vacation, knee surgery at the clinic, a sports event at Ignatius, a long weekend to see a baseball game and pass through the market, they all come through Ohio City at some point for the most part. And so I think it's a much needed use, and I think you've seen that with a couple other projects that have been proposed in the area and have just met really challenging times for development and haven't proceeded. So hopefully we're the one. And that's it. And now I can take some questions. Correct. It's a surface parking lot right now on the corner of 26th and Lorraine. Not necessarily. We haven't worked out a full program yet of how we want to manage parking, but hotels predominantly use spaces overnight, right? When people have to park cars, and we have gotten troves and troves of data from the large conglomerates, if you will, who run, Hilton, Marriott, those kind of things, who have thousands of hotels for us to pull information from. And you'd be surprised how few people actually are getting to hotels these days for the most part, especially during the week, business travelers, things like that, using vehicles as opposed to getting Ubers. No. Right. And so the next piece of that is during the day when people are in town but they're not at the hotel and they're out doing whatever they came to Cleveland to do. Theoretically, some of those spaces become available, and we're working on a way to collaborate and how to manage that so that we're sensitive to some of the uses that and the businesses that park cars there now, and predominantly employees, and how easy it is. And there's other lots. There's St. Ignatius. There's the MRN stuff to the south, where I don't think they get the most utility. I think they get certain hours of the day where they're packed, certain hours of the day where they're completely empty. And so there's a way to maximize efficiency, utilization, cross collaboration amongst those projects. And I'm taking that on as kind of my onus. Really for the benefit of the broader neighborhood and the groups around. Yeah, it's actually owned by Ohio City Incorporated. So we're under contract to purchase it. We have not transacted yet, but yes. And so they've owned a lot for roughly 20 years. Previous to that, I think it was the city of Cleveland, and stakeholders nearby at the time had also passed on the opportunity to purchase the lot. And so, I think at this point in time, with the evolution of the neighborhood and the commercial district specifically, it was at some point going to be developed. So whether it's this building or apartments or some other business, an expansion of Great Lakes Brewing, at some point someone was going to do something with it. And I think for where we are today, this is the best idea. Right. Yeah, you're right. And actually, the collaboration word you said a few times was a word I used a few times as well. So that's the intent, right? And it's also to get some of those adjacent landowners who have the excess parking and aren't currently using it to kind of open up and discuss a collaborative solution. You know, that's a block south, half block really, behind Boaz and some of those surface lots. And I walk there every day, right? I sit in Edda Coffee every day, and I watch it, and I observe, and I take pictures, and I see the patterns, and I understand how people are using them or not using them. And there's to Matt's earlier point, I know that the thought of management versus just having more and more and more spaces is a hard one to appreciate, but it can be done in such a way that there's not a drastic reduction in the amount of available parking on a day-to-day basis, especially at peak hours for local businesses, which again are different peak hours than the hotel use. And so I appreciate your statement about hotel rates being higher, and that's true. We certainly, in a collaborative nature, would not charge hotel rates to monthly, hourly parkers that are employees or residents of the building that use the lot now. So that is all part of the game plan to discuss and work through and figure out a way forward. Yeah, I mean, I guess, Jess, go ahead. Yeah, so within the hotel there will be meeting space. There will be some wellness, you know, like we're looking at some spa stuff, but minimum of that, right? And really trying to create really dynamic spaces also where people can work from the lobby and then hang out in the lobby and really get in and out. And I don't think we have enough types of those spaces, and it's evidenced by some of the coffee shops nearby, for example. And like the third space is the hot word of the day, but if you go into any of those spaces, it's hard to get a chair, right? And I will say, as just an example, the people sitting in the Art Cafe at Edda, they don't live in the building predominantly, so they're coming from somewhere, and they're getting here on foot, on bike, on scooter, by bus. So yes, some of them are driving for sure, and they keep coming every day. And so it's not so difficult to get to and from and around that the people are avoiding it. And so I think what makes it difficult to get around is when you do have swaths of nothingness, aka lots or empty lots and things like that bisect and break up otherwise really beautiful dynamic areas. And so you know, that comes with its challenges and its problems to solve, and that's one of the things I hope to do. Yes, sir. Whoever, we'll get to everybody, so whoever is ready. No, at the moment, this doesn't contemplate anything to do with Great Lakes property. And Great Lakes, frankly, hasn't said anything about their future plans yet. So no, this is just isolated to parking lot. Yep. So the only use that's currently that we would need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for is the hotel itself. Ironically, there are only 2 districts in the entire city that allow for hotels. This district is adjacent to those districts in terms of its level of allowed uses, and so it does require a variance versus a zoning change. So other than that, we're not seeking any variances or changes for things like height, density, certainly not restaurant and things like that, or parking. So it's really just the use itself. At the moment, no. We will probably announce something of that nature soon, but the intent is to keep this an independently branded, really great, authentic, honest, neighborhood-driven hotel. And so even if it end up being backed by one of the larger companies, my goal, mission, intent is to keep it really that you will never be able to tell that, certainly from the street, and and hopefully, not until you really go to book your room. So a project of this size, the construction should take 14 to 15 months, and I think there's ways we can improve that. But predominantly, when you're talking about exterior and circulation, you're worried about the external construction. Once we get to the inside of the building, some of that can be minimized. But call it 15 months. I think we have the benefit of having access onto 28th, and there's that appendage kind of, I call it that. So it's about a 50-foot wide swath of property between Great Lakes docks on 28th and the buildings and the small little alleyway there. So we intend to use as much of that as possible for things like staging, loading, moving in and out, especially because 28th, like right there between Lorraine and Bridge, doesn't have really any residential, so we're trying not to disrupt residential traffic, and it already serves as kind of like you said, a heavy loading and delivery zone for the grocery store, for the brewery. So we haven't put together a logistics plan yet, for that stuff, and that'll be things that as we refine this and we get down the road and get closer to that groundbreaking date, that we'll have to plan, work through with the city. I will do things that the city requires, like keep sidewalks open and safety zones and things like that, whereas I know some of the stuff that's been being built lately doesn't abide by it. I will do that, and that'll be on me. And I present my own stuff. I meet the neighbors myself. I go through the process myself, and generally it's to be visible and accessible, so that when things are off or something is awry, that you can reach me directly instead of having to go through an architect or a surrogate or some person that you've never met. Yeah. Disaster it's been tough, right? And it's been tough going on 2.5, 3 years now. So the good news is hospitality is actually being looked at, hotels specifically are being looked at pretty favorably because there has been so little new development in that realm. The city of Cleveland, again, not the biggest city in the world, but still a top 50 metropolitan city, hasn't had a new development of a hotel in 9 years, right? And it'll be 10 by the time that we're done if we can keep schedule. So just thinking about that, there's been renovation projects and there's been existing hotels that have been updated, but the first new rooms that will come on the market that are a net add will be later this year downtown in the Fidelity Hotel, which is a 90-room boutique project. But I think that just is pent-up demand, and it proves better for what we want to do. And I think the size and scale of what we're trying here at 130-ish rooms is the right size. It's not too big where it's going to take 2 years to finance. It's not so small that we can't run it efficiently. It's kind of in that sweet spot. And so those conversations are already working in the background. And as far as your question about the planning process, very early, right? We've had kind of meetings to discuss the use and the idea, and certainly the lack of a hotel, not just in Ohio City, but on the west side. There's no rooms until you get out past like 130th, and they're really service, or like limited service, La Quintas and kind of the old Marriott that turned into a Wyndham that you could almost miss driving by it. And then the hotel at the airport closed too. So there's just a huge gap, and we want to do a special project that adds to the dynamic of the neighborhood and hopefully fills that gap. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're hearing. Yeah, I can't speak to their specific circumstances. It always complicates things when you have multiple uses in the same project, whether it's apartments and hotel or apartments and office, or anytime there's an and there's trying to put different things together, it's when it gets a little challenging. I will say too, there's micro markets within markets, right? Like, so the intersection at Detroit and 25th is different than the intersection at Lorraine and 25th, and is different than 65th, and is different than and on, right? And so when a bank, for example, is looking at a project, they get into the weeds and they're looking at the dynamics of a very specific intersection or corner or 500-foot radius to make those types of decisions. And so I think that also that project unfortunately had the challenge of being proposed at the worst time, at the time when the entire lending markets were a disaster. And we're now coming out of that and getting a little bit more favorable. And so I think we're in a good position. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And as a reminder, our membership drive is now through the September 22nd. So if you're not a member of Ohio City, it does not cost you anything. There's a form on the way out the door, or you can go on our website, and that allows you to vote in our Board of Elections, which is coming up in October. It also allows you to run for our board, and we have, I believe, 5 seats that'll be up for election. So if you're interested in getting involved and shaping Ohio City Incorporated, we encourage you to apply. If you have any questions, feel free to come and ask me about that. And the Ohio Street Festival is September 15th, 11 to 7. We're looking for volunteers or business participation. So if you have anything you'd like to do for that in that way, come find me. But we'll see you at the annual meeting, which is next month, September 24th, which is a week later than our normal meeting. So we'll see you then. Thanks, guys.